Good evening. Welcome to the City of Opa-locka Special Commission meeting. Called this meeting in order to discuss our audit and also another resolution. With that said, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Taylor, Vice Mayor Williams,
Here.
Mayor Pike.
I'm here. Vice Mayor Williams will lead us in invocation.
Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for the many blessings bestowed upon us this day and every day. Lord, we ask that you watch over this meeting, watch over the great city of Opa-locka and all its residents and employees. Amen.
Pledge of allegiance.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Madam Clerk, could you go over the protocols for public input?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, good afternoon. City of Opa-locka Commission meetings are held in person while allowing virtual public presentations. Members of the public wishing to address the commission may do so in person or virtually. To participate virtually, please register on the City of Opa-locka website at www.opalockafl.gov. At this time, Mr. Mayor, we don't have any participants that are speaking virtually, but there may be some out in the public.
All right. Public input on agenda items is open.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commission, and staff. My name is Dottie Johnson. I reside at 13724 Northwest 22nd Place. As an appointed member of the Audit Committee, I've came in front of this body at least 3 different times asking to hold an Audit Committee meeting. We have not met since December the 28th of 2020. And according to Florida Statute of 2020, Statute 218.319, I strongly encourage the commission to read both sides to see the responsibility of the audit committee. I really, truly don't want to just be on a committee for a paper trail. I'm absolutely concerned with appointments and not having meetings. And you have various committees that have not met in years. And so if this is the call of it, then I need to follow up with the governor's office. And I will be so courteous to come in front of you again. To the chair and all of the other 2 members, we need to meet and not have a workshop, joint workshop. Joint workshop, we can't input. We can't make recommendation. We can't do motion. Please do the right thing. May God bless you.
Public input is open. Public input is closed. I'll address that public comment. We will be calling a audit committee workshop at this conclusion of this actual meeting. I do want to say and state that this meeting wasn't as planned as we would like in terms of this audit process. So I hope that in the future, in our next audit process, we'll be able to have time and also more headway and notice about the status updates so that we can plan meetings as an audit committee. So with that said, I'll move on to our presentation. Any other comments? All right, we'll move on to our presentation by Mr. Anthony Brunson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commission, citizens of Opa-locka. I am Anthony Brunson of Anthony Brunson, PA, and here to provide an overview of the prior year, the September 30th, 2019 audit. And we're certainly available to come back and spend more detail to the extent there is a desire to do so. The actual audit report itself is 110 plus pages, so it gets pretty extensive. And what we traditionally do is summarize the audit results and do a financial overview on a PowerPoint presentation. So I believe that PowerPoint presentation is available to you guys. I don't know, I'm gonna pull it up on the screen. There it is. And what this does is provide a trend of the assets, liabilities of the city over the past 3 years. So if you would go to the next slide, here we have the statement of net position of your governmental activities and the trend over the past 3 years. Just as a prelude to this year's audit opinion is an unmodified opinion, which means it meets all of the accounting standards. So I want to congratulate the city and its staff and the efforts that have been made, Mr. Manager, over the past 3-4 years now to get to this level. So it is unmodified, which means there are no exceptions in connection with the actual financial statements. If you recall the journey, we started with no opinion, modified opinion for certain items. So this is what's known in the industry as a clean audit opinion. So again, I just wanted to congratulate the staff and the real Herculean efforts that have been made over this tenure to get to this stage. Nevertheless, we compare our assets. It have actually grown, as shown in the slide, from $35 million to $37.2 million. It is a growth of almost $1.9 million or 5%. And that really reflects increases in your cash balances and your due from other governments. So the activity in the funding has increased for the 2019 fiscal period. So the assets are going in the right way. You can see your liabilities. Last year were 30.793. This year they're 29.5. That's a little more than $1 million less, a reduction of some 4%. And it's timing differences and austerity measures, that has been taken by the city and the team that have reduced that amount. We have this item that's called net inflows and outflows. It's down to $621,000. And that's really related to pension obligations and some of the changes in your pension accounts. Relatively new accounting that's done over the past few years with the recognition of the pension. These obligations are long-term obligations generally. Your net position, which is a real big plus, you can see it's gone from 6.3 million over to $8.4 million. That's an increase of $2 million or 33%. And a big part of that had to do with cleaning up some of the past year's activity and reevaluating certain items. So again, everything in connection with your governmental activities funds, which is your general fund, and some of the other general activities, all going in the right direction. And please stop me anytime there are questions. The next slide does a similar statement of net position. This deals with your proprietary funds, your water and sewer funds and other like funds. So here you can see the growth in your assets from last year, 17.8 million to over $19.2 million. That's a growth of 1.4 million. And it has to do with primarily the capital assets, water meters and the like that came aboard during that cycle as you transitioned with Miami-Dade County. The debt for these funds increased from 16.2 million to over $19.3 million. It was a pretty significant increase of about 19%, or $3 million. And that's the recognition of primarily the long-term debt with the county, Miami-Dade County obligations. As they brought those meters on, they financed some of that activity as well as some of the other activity. Kind of turn to Jerry, please correct me if I'm. And legal fees, allowances of about $1 million associated with some litigation. So overall, our net position dropped, but in the proprietary fund to a slight deficit of $28,000. But again, I think a lot of positive has occurred in connection with being more, accountable in connection with the water and sewer activity. The next slide gives an overview of your revenues associated with your governmental activities, and it gives you your trends, again, comparing this year to last year. As you can see, total revenues last year were like $15.1 million. This year's overall revenues have grown to $17.8 million. Again, a real positive trend. That's an increase of over 18% or $2.7 million when compared to the prior year. It shows the individual categories there of those trends. You can see charges from services, 1.4 to 1.5. The big groupings are your property taxes. Last year was around $7 million. Last year in 2018, it was around $20 million. This year it's grown to $8.5 million as the end of 2019. And obviously that's one of the core items for any city. So to have that growth is a real positive trend. And the other big one is your intergovernmental revenue, which is funding from other governments that flow to the city. You can see it went from 822,000 in 2018 to over 1.7 million in 2019. So again, really positive trends in connection with the city. The overview of your operating expenses is the next slide. So this shows the revenue, but the next slide will show your operating expenses, page 5. You guys, and again, in 2018, the total government expenses were $15.6 million. In 2019, there's a slight growth of little more than $16 million, or about, $300,000 or so. Overall, there's nothing that really jumps out. It's, it's again, only a 2% increase compared to the prior year, which is typically, as everyone knows, costs go up. So again, a positive trend. There is, consistency among the categories. General government is up just a bit compared to the prior years, but it's pretty consistent when you look at public safety and your transit and cultural, recreation, et cetera. So again, that's the overview of your governmental funds. The next couple slides looks at the proprietary funds and your overview of revenue for the years, showing again a 3-year trend. And you can see in terms of your charges for services, you went from 8.1 million in 2018 to $13.9 million in 2019. So again, there's that's a big increase of more than $5 million, $5.7 million. Nice jump of like 70%. But again, it's related to a lot of the buildings that were caught up and implementing those systems, getting those meters in, et cetera, so that you're closer to the recognition of your revenue from your water and sewer funds compared to past years. And the last slide, page 7, goes through the operating expenses related to the proprietary funds. It went from $9 million to over $15 million. And a big part of that cost is the evaluations were done of the receivables over the past years and the buildup of those accounts receivables and some old billings, which resulted in a substantial increase in your overall allowance account to identify the collectability of the receivables. So the allowances were set aside for $5 million. As you know, being a city, you always have the opportunity to place liens on those entities that have not paid and recover those dollars. So just to kind of say all was not entirely lost in connection with that allowance amount, but it is the prudent approach to take and reserve it for accounting purposes. So that's the overview of the actual financial activity. As said, we got an unmodified opinion on the statements. We removed those, the facilities. You have physical inventories done. So again, we take the, taking the right actions to get to where we have this unmodified opinion. In connection with some of the findings, it has been significant improvements as well with the findings overall. But, as you recall, there were 99, I think it was, beginning some 4 years ago. Those numbers are, primarily removed, certainly better progress. But, again, there's progress to be made in terms of the overall internal control environment of the city. And those findings would be in the back of the report under the compliance sections. So if there are any specific questions now or in the future, we're available to respond.
Floor is open for any questions or comments for the commission.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brunson, from such a great presentation of our audit. I had a question related to a topic that you discussed relative to, water collections. Of course, that's been an ongoing issue here in the city. But I think I heard you speak to liens, or maybe putting some liens against those accounts that have went delinquent. Is that a accounting, practice where we can kind of record those numbers on our books to, even though we haven't collected it? Is that what you are recommending?
Well, that's a decision of the commission, and I really would have to defer to the city attorney in terms of what those actions could be. But the point I'm making is they are recorded on the books. The allowance has been provided. So from an accounting point of view and an audit point of view, it's fairly stated in connection with your financial statements. But to the effort and the extent of effort that you'd like to take in collecting those amounts, I just know that it is an option available for cities. But again, I kind of stay in my lane and defer to the city attorney.
No, I know, and I know that there are some legal challenges that are associated with it, because we've discussed it in previous meetings with the manager. But I just wanted to, understand from an accounting perspective how we would deal with an issue like that, such as the collection of water revenues, which we've seen decline over the years. So thank you for that.
Anyone else? All right, Mr. Brunson, I want to thank you again for your work in the city of Opa-locka. You've been with us on this journey since we've gotten into this financial crisis, and you've seen us at one of our most challenging times, and now we are getting towards the light, and I appreciate your assistance. And of course, I think a majority of the kudos goes to Tri-Merge CPA and staff that have been really working on this over the past 4 years to make it to where we are today. So much respect for all the work that's been done in this with this audit. One of the things that I recognized and I saw, and Commissioner Davis actually brought it up, was about the water collection. And I see that there was over a 67% increase in the revenues. And I think it went from 8.4 from prior year to 14 million. Are those revenues based upon just books, or is that cash in hand that actually came into the city?
That's actually based upon billings. Billings that are available that go out that had not been done in, doing cycles traditionally. I, again, would best defer to Ms. Lazar in connection with that, but these are billings that, when the switchover occurred, we started identifying, or the city began to identify sources that may have not been billed in the past, had not been billed proper amounts, et cetera. So with the capturing all of that data, it shows the reflective increase in your billing activity. But I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add.
So it's just billing, not actual cash collected.
That is correct. It's actual billings. Actual cash was around $10 million, if I recall correctly. And we talked about the allowance being $5 million. So yes, the amounts are billed, but again, there is an allowance that has been placed in expense, so to speak, to reserve the actual collections related to those billings.
Got it. Yeah. This audit year 18-19 kind of shows that point in which we started to collect the majority of the transfers of our water bills went to Miami-Dade. So to see such a significant increase in capturing the revenues is significant. The other piece is making sure that actually comes into the city. And that's the other part that we have to tackle. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then I did see that a few of the findings have come together. How was it, this process in terms of, I know each year, the prior audits had quite a few findings, and this one doesn't have as many, but there's still some challenges, I believe, with like bank reconciliations and DERM. Could you speak a little bit more about the bank reconciliation process and also DERM and how we're doing in terms of addressing those issues?
Well, having the benefit of time, keep in mind we're still at September 30th, 2019, but having the benefit of time, things like DERM, we've had an opportunity to actually meet with the authorities and their agencies and reconcile what has been collected or what was not collected in the past and what should have been collected. So, going through all of those processes, we've gotten to a number that, we're comfortable with, your staff is comfortable with, and we can opine on in connection with that revenue. Again, in the past, some of the revenue was not recognized, speaking frankly, but having the benefit of time and having had the opportunity through your team to identify what should have been captured and what actually was captured and what's available going forward. So that created an additional source of revenue. But some of that is, we talk in terms of the calculation of how DERM is calculated. And if I recall correctly, I've been neglectful and not recognizing Tadito Gatsy, who's served this year as the manager on the account. I think we were adding a surtax of 8%, and the actual state statutes say we should add a surtax of 6%. So those comments regarding DERM has a part reconciling those differences and identifying the differences, that 2% difference as a potential liability, which has been recognized in the books. And the other side is, again, amounts that just had not been billed properly and collected in the past. So it's all kind of reconciled under that caption, under that comment. And going forward, I believe the adjustments have been made or will be made to the proper rates of 6%.
Thank you. I know being an external auditor, you have a outsider perspective where you can come in and look at our books and look at our operations and really see what we can focus on. As a kind of young commission, actually, what would you say we should put our focus and concentration on when it comes to us audit and finances over the next year to make sure that we are diligent with our finances and taking care of our taxpayers, good stewards of our taxpayers' funds?
Okay, there are reconciliations that do remain. One of that areas would be some of the due to, due from account activity. And this is where balances are showing of amounts due among the funds. So that could be an area we'd strongly recommend that you take a look at. We could enhance, again, one of the carry forward comments have been enhancing the accounting system to assist you in better capturing some of the data and being able to do proper cutoffs at year end from a third party, process. We're still looking at, you mentioned some of the checks being outstanding for over a year. So, kind of taking a look at those in connection with your bank reconciliations. But I know there's state rules. There's this fund that the state of Florida, you have to kind of go through that process to properly clear stale checks. And I think actions have been taken to do that. So you just can't not take them off your books until you kind of go through a process as well. But those would be some of the major issues. A good accounting system would be helpful. Actually furthering your reconciliations of some intercompany account activity, looking further into your payables. We talked earlier of some of the litigation accruals that were on the books. So it's just staying the course. And as you continue to move forward, as you mentioned, many of the comments have been addressed and will be removed in future reports. But, there is still work to be done.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Before we move on to resolution, I do want to make sure that we get some clarity about this next audit. This is the 1819 audit that we're passing. Mr. Manager, could you speak on the game plan for completing our last outstanding audit?
Mr. Mayor, I'll be meeting with staff next week and we'll draft the appropriate timeline to be provided to the City Commission.
All right. And with that, can we also call an audit committee at the soonest possible time for the audit committee to go over this information and also be prepared for this next audit?
Mr. Mayor, you're the chair. As long as you direct me to look at dates to call a meeting, I will.
Yes, please.
No problem.
All right. All right. Any comments, questions on our audits? Anything else?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if I heard it, but I know in previous years, we've expressed interest in having a comprehensive report, the CAFRA. And I'm not sure if this, referring to the 2019 audit, has that information. So a question to Mr. Bronson, yes or no, if it's included in this current, the 2019 fiscal year audit.
To secure the CAFR, it requires 10 years of statistical data. So that would be, as you continue to evolve, one of the next steps to work toward gathering that statistical data and including it in your audit reports.
Got it.
So you have to go back 10 years and pull that information together.
Okay. So I guess in about 6 years or 5 years or something like that, we'll be in line. Okay.
Well, it's available. You can go back to the extent you can capture that information and include it into the audit report. So this is not yet there. It's considered the annual financial report. A CAFR would have that kind of history to satisfy those requirements.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bronson. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bronson, for your work in the city over the past few months in getting this audit completed. With that said, let's move on to our resolutions. 7A. Madam Attorney.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, accepting and approving the 2018-2019 audit financial statement and annual financial report, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date, sponsored by the city manager.
Do you have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Teller,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor Williams. The floor is open for discussion. Hearing no discussion, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
7B, Madam Attorney.
A resolution for the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, extending an agreement with Tremorich Consulting Group, PA, for a 3-month period, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date, sponsored by city manager.
Do you have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Vice Mayor Williams.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Teller. Any discussion on this item? Well, Mr. Manager, could you introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I expressed to the City Commission, until we get a proper amount of responses in and a final closeout date for our financial services RFP, that we will be doing 3-month extensions to Ms. Lazier's contract, not to extend the contract too far. So when those findings and eventual recommendation does come in, then we can transition her contract to a point where we're dealing with the transition if that is the case. So I did not want to extend the contract for more than 6-month period of time, especially while we have this RFP out on the street. So as I directed and instructed the City Commission that we will be bringing forth 3-month extensions of her contract until that point.
Any discussion on this item? Mr. Manager, what is the challenge that we're having as a city in getting proper responses to this RFP?
I have not reported to the City Commission that we've been having difficult time obtaining responses. The RFP period is still open and hasn't been closed out yet.
Oh, the RFP period hasn't been closed
No,
yet?
it's still open.
Got it. Okay. And I know that one of the things that's been a challenge with this consulting group and even future is having the support staff in the city. What's the status and update of recruiting the staffing in the finance department? And are we doing anything to attract some competitive candidates?
So there's any significant staffing. There is not any significant staffing issues as far as head count within the finance department, other than, I believe, a senior accountant position that is open, and maybe one other position within the finance department. We have the staff that's currently assigned to the finance department. Difficulties you see is just recruiting for individuals to work for the city. And we're going through a salary analysis now to look at the city's pay plan holistically. And once that's done, I'll be able to provide a recommendation to the commission. Furthermore, we don't know what direction we're going to go as far as the RFP and its closure and how that's going to look, and what final recommendation I'll be making to the city commission in regards to the finance department holistically.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, relative to the recruitment problem within the finance department. I know at one point we looked at the salary requirements and ultimately changed that threshold. Is that still a challenge in your opinion, Mr. Manager, when it comes to recruitment?
Commissioner Davis, that's something we always look at, especially when we're recruiting and hiring individuals. And we tend to, once we do proper recruitment and hiring, we do address that salary discrepancy at the time of recruitment. I will tell you, we do not have the amount of deficiencies as far as staffing numbers in the finance department as we had over the last 6 or 7 months ago. We went through that mass hiatus of employees from the finance department. For the most part, most of those positions have been filled, and the staff has been performing in a way that I feel is a Herculean task based on what we have in front of us, especially being down 2 audits.
Got it. So, because I mean, if it is a salary issue, and given that, of course, we're ahead of, next year's or this upcoming budget, could it be something that is incorporated in this process? Like maybe we can look at, raising levels. If it's, again, if that's a challenge, while we're, ultimately hashing out numbers and having, these upcoming budget conversations. I think it'll be fiscally responsible to at least consider that.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Davis, of course, that is something we look at during the time of recruitment and bringing people on board. We'll also look at the recommendations being provided from the finance department and its interim finance director when navigating those waters. And it's looking at the level of skill of the staff that you're bringing on, having accountants that have CPA licenses versus not having CPA licenses, and just looking at various other matters. But just know there is a very much an open mind and looking at that, and I work with Ms. Lazire on a daily basis to address those issues as they come about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager.
All right, hearing no further comments, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott,
Yes.
motion passes 4-0.
Before we adjourn, I do want to make a quick comment. I do like the fact on a Friday of being able to get in and out very quickly. I would ask that these meetings be pushed to at least 5:30. That gives some of us that are work professionals time to get here, get prepared, or maybe even 6. But 5 o'clock meetings are very difficult for us as working professionals. So can we make that happen, Mr. Manager, future meeting scheduling?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'll also ask the clerk to do a proper polling of the commission members based on various timeframes. Not a problem.
All right, thank you. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Commissioner Davis.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Teller. I want to thank everyone for your time today and all the work that's been put in. Y'all have an amazing weekend. Take care, everyone.